Hello, everybody. I'm Frank Gruber, the co-CEO of Established. Welcome back to day 3 of the summit. We're here today with a very special guest, Mr. Tim Draper, and he's joining us all the way from California. Tim is one of the top global venture capitalists out there in the world. He founded Draper Associates, DFJ, and the Draper Venture Network, which is a global network of venture capitalist funds. His firm is invested in companies that we've all heard of, companies like Tesla and SpaceX and Baidu and Coinbase and Robinhood and Twitch TV and Skype, and the list goes on and on. Carta is another one more recently. And obviously he's a big leader and spokesperson for Bitcoin and the blockchain and ICOs and cryptocurrency, and was the inventor and creator of viral marketing with Hotmail, and some of those features were brought into Skype, and some of those features effectively have turned into kind of the groundwork for social media. And he's created this Draper University of Heroes, which is a really interesting online school based in San Mateo. He's done things within his state as well, and the list goes on and on. Welcome, Tim. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Frank. I'm kind of exhausted thinking about all that stuff.
It's amazing.
But, it's been fun. It just shows how old I am.
No, you've been at it, but it's just it shows that you've got that gusto to keep doing new things. So before we get started, I want to make sure everyone that's listening right now, you can join the conversation via Twitter. There's also a chat right now that you can join in there. But if you want to join the conversation via Twitter and use the hashtag Startup of the Year and Startup Hero together, and we're going to be giving away some free books. We've got Tim's book here. He's the author of the Startup Hero, as I mentioned. And we're going to be giving away some books for those of you that you're enjoying the discussion, but share some of your thoughts and become part of the conversation. So our favorite tweets will get some books. So that's kind of
terrific. I enjoyed writing that book. I traveled so much. I wrote it on my iPhone on airplanes because I kept being on these long airplane flights, and I thought, well, what would be a good thing to do during these airplane flights?
Wow.
That's
amazing. Did you do it in notes? Just in notes? You just typed it up?
Yeah, it was great. And it's a fun thing to do. I highly recommend writing a book. It's great fun.
Excellent. We'll dive into that in a little bit. But first, let's just dive into your venture capitalist background. You come from a long line of investors. You're a 4th generation investor. Is that right? 4th generation? Get that right?
I'm 3rd. My grandfather was the first Silicon Valley venture capital investor. My dad was a pioneer in venture capital. He really plowed some great turf. And then I started, and I was the 3rd generation, but my children, 3 of my children are venture capitalists.
Right, pretty amazing.
And they've done very well. Adam with Boost is a tremendous success. And Billy worked with me at Draper Associates, and now he's at Path Ventures. He spun out. It was a sad and proud moment for a father when he spun out. And my daughter Jessie runs Halogen Ventures, and she backs only women.
Right, and Jessie actually joined us. She joined us earlier this year. We had these lead up events for Startup of the Year that kind of culminate in this event, and she helped us kind of with some of the one of the lead up events. She actually was a judge and helped us figure out which companies are going to be fast tracked to this event today. So that's pretty exciting.
Oh, terrific! Yeah, she's a good judge of it. They all grew up. I mean, they saw how excited I was at the dinner table about my work, and I think they just took to it.
Definitely. She had some great advice for startups that were part of that. All right, so you started looking at startups, right away. You created your own fund backed by SBA actually, which is kind of interesting. And then you started investing. You've got some amazing investments. Which one, from I mentioned some earlier, Hotmail, Skype, Baidu, Tesla, SpaceX. Which one are you most proud of thus far?
I think the one that really set me on the right path was Hotmail, because we it was pretty funny. We were sitting around in the at this board meeting with the Hotmail founders, and they had created a system where you could do web-based email, and I looked and I said, how are you going to get it out there? And they said, well, maybe we'll buy some airtime, TV airtime, put up billboards and radio stations and whatever. And I was saying, we put what $150,000 in here. It's not.
Right. Just
It's
burn
a
money is what it sounds like. That what they were saying, right?
nanosecond of airtime.
Right.
And we decided. Then I said, "Can't you just get it out to all those people on that internet thing, that that ARPANET?"
Mhm.
And they said, "No, that would be spamming." And so that was a new word for me.
Right.
And then I said, "Well, wait. What if you're giving this away for free? What if you put a little message at the bottom of everybody's email saying, P.S. I love you, get your free email at Hotmail?" And they looked at me like, "Oh God, of all the investors in the world, why did we get this guy?" And I kept pounding and pounding and pounding. Finally, they gave up and they said, "Okay, we'll do it, but no P.S. I love you. Just get your free email."
I thought that was the best part.
Well, I know we would have had a much more peaceful and loving world, I think,
Right.
if they kept the P.S. I love you. But still, it allowed the world to open up, and it spread to 11 million users in 18 months. And now there are, web-based email is pretty much everywhere. I mean, that's Gmail, that's Yahoo Mail, it's Hotmail, it's and so I think maybe 2 billion of the 4 billion people on the internet, maybe 5 billion people on the internet, are all connected through web-based email. Well, that connected all of us. It shrunk geographic borders. Interesting story. The founder said he sent one email to a friend in India, and this was way back when, 1995, I guess, and it spread to 100,000 registered Hotmail users in India.
Wow.
And at that time, I don't think there were 100,000 computers in India.
Right.
So they just got everybody, multiple accounts on every computer.
So pretty much everyone in India got that email at that point.
Yeah.
That had an email address. That's pretty phenomenal.
And so I think the world is much closer and tighter because of it, and that and Skype have both, and then Skype, of course, allowed us all to talk to each other and then eventually see each other.
Yeah, let's talk about Skype for a second. So Skype, we're during this current global pandemic, everyone's using video calling. It's become table stakes more or less for everything that we're doing every single day. And let's talk about Skype, because that was actually started as an audio-based program, right?
Yeah, we had another good fun story. I had to be in two places at once. I had to be in Palo Alto at a conference Tony Perkins was throwing, and I had to be in Estonia at a Skype board meeting. And so I asked Tony if we could try to video conference. Mm-hmm. And I asked the Skype guys if they could set up a video conference there and rent the equipment. At time, video conference was like this. But I thought, well, maybe we'll give it a shot and we'll always have audio backup. And so we did it. And Nicholas and I interviewed Nicholas for the conference. So it was kind of a fun benefit of the creative. Mm-hmm. And we had a great interview. And at the end of the interview, Nicholas kind of looks at me and smiles. And I said, "What?" And he said, "That was the first Skype video call." And I said, "What? You used it? What is that?" And then I thought, well, let's see how it went. And I called Tony, and he said, "Oh yeah, we could see the pores of your skin."
Wow.
And I said, "Whoa, we've got a winner here." Nicholas says, "Well, no, not so fast, Tim. We cut off 100,000 simultaneous audio calls in order to get the bandwidth so that we could do."
That's pretty funny. Yeah. So
my daughter Jessie was also on that Skype video.
Oh wow.
She was traveling with me, and so I guess it was take your daughter to work day or something. But anyway, I took her with me.
Wow.
And so she is quite proud to say that she was also on the first Skype video call. And now, of course, Skype, Zoom, all of these have really had a huge impact on our world.
Right. Definitely.
Long term, I think the one that's going to have the most impact might be SpaceX, because when we colonize Mars, I think that
SpaceX, yeah.
That will be a big deal.
Yeah, I'd say that's a big one. That's not, I mean, that's literally a moonshot, right? So let's talk about that one. I mean,
Planet
you
shot.
planet shot, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty bold, right? To go out there with as a leader and say we're going to Mars, and then you guys obviously support that with your investment. So what do you see there that makes you like invest?
Entrepreneurs like all of you out there um, have a couple of different approaches. There are many different approaches. There's one that's customer based. I mean, always love your customer, delight your customer, do what you can for your customer, and then there are those entrepreneurs who say we're going to Mars,
Right.
And then what happens is a lot of people think, oh boy, that's crazy. Why would anybody think that we could go to Mars? That seems impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But then all the best engineers in the world say, how would we get to Mars? And then they say, I think I can help them. And so he, like Elon, ends up with the best engineers in the world. They all come from all over the world to work at SpaceX.
Right.
And and they do it because he inspired them to think of something that might be possible, and got everybody thinking about that. And I think that's another great way to run a business. The other one, the one I think about Nicholas Zenstrom and Robin Lee. They both came to me, Nicholas from Skype and Robin from Baidu. They both came to me and said the exact same words. They're from two different countries and very different cultures. They both said, I want to delight my customer. And somehow that delight, something about the idea of delighting a customer, I think makes a huge difference for people.
That's interesting. I mean, I've heard that now. A number of successful companies have a similar kind of mantra. Thinking about customer service with Zappos, they ended up obviously getting acquired by Amazon.
Oh yeah, I mean when you talk to Jeff Bezos, that's all he's thinking about. How do I make the experience better for my customer, better for my customer, better for my customer?
Definitely.
And these guys are absolute heroes. They have done extraordinary things for people. Mm-hmm. I think of how much people say, oh, Bezos, whatever. I don't know what they're picking on him for, yeah. But he should be revered because he has brought more people out of poverty than anybody else, I think, on the planet, except maybe the Google guys. They have educated more people on the planet than anybody else. But he has think about how the wealth and the convenience and the improvement in life that he has created with Amazon. If I need something, I can go to Amazon, push one button, and boom, it shows up the next day. That is amazing, and it is magic. And that's because that entrepreneur said, we will delight our customer. We will do what we can to make that product arrive to that customer as quickly as it possibly can.
It's pretty phenomenal. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Amazon, I had my groceries delivered today, like this morning, for this call. I didn't have to go and run into the store to do it. And obviously with the current situation in the world, it feels safer to me, so I don't know. So, okay. So let's talk about, you talked about Baidu briefly. Let's talk about, you were actually one of the first investors from Silicon Valley to invest in China, and you invested in Baidu. You want to talk about it a little bit briefly, and then maybe talk about some other similar places where you see opportunity for investment.
Well, I was lucky because I had a window on international activity when I got started in the venture business. My dad was the chairman of the Export-Import Bank of the U.S., and then he was the UN Development Program Administrator. He traveled to 110 countries. He saw it all. But anyway, I got a chance to go with him on one of these UN missions. And so I was, or a couple of them actually, but one was to China. And at that time, there was one main road. We drove on the only car on this one main road that took us to the one international hotel in all of Beijing.
Wow.
And and everybody there was on bicycles and trading fruit and vegetables with food in these big Chinese hats. And that was China. That was China. Mm-hmm. And then I went back about 15 years later, and I met with one of the ministers of the economy there. And he said, "You must invest in our country." And I said, "I'm not going to invest in your country. Why would I ever invest in your country?" And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah. Well, the last guy I knew who put money into China, he created a $90 million chocolate company, and you guys nationalized it. You stole it from him."
Right.
And he said, "Well, what would you recommend?" And I said, "I would recommend that if anybody invests any money in your country, you make sure that if they are successful, that they can pull their money out and tell all their friends about it. And then you will get more money invested in your country than you ever imagined." Mm-hmm. And he was listening. And about 5 years after that, I went back with DFJ ePlanet and met with, I was the first Silicon Valley venture capitalist to look at China mm-hmm. as an investor. And I met with Jack Ma. I mean, he was such a passionate guy, but his English was broken, and I couldn't quite understand what he was talking about doing, but he was very passionate. I saw him give a speech. Mm-hmm. I met with Pony Ma. So I could have invested in all three of the BAT, but I met with Robin Lee, and I thought, wow, this guy is pretty incredible. And he was a very tough negotiator. And we had a tough battle in a taxi cab about the valuation, and we finally came to terms. Mm-hmm. And boy, was that a great decision, I think, on both of our parts. And Robin created an amazing company. And think of what Google has done for America and a lot of the English-speaking world. Baidu has done the same for the Chinese-speaking world and some of the Japanese-speaking world. So we're very pleased with that investment. We think it really had an amazing impact on China. I'm sorry that they have the dictator that they have now, but before that they had a very open country, and they were growing at an incredibly fast rate. Mm-hmm. And the people of that country were enjoying their entrepreneurial freedoms. It was a fabulous time, and so we made a lot of other investments in China during that time.
But obviously not investing now with the.
No, we pulled out completely.
Yep.
As soon as we saw that there was a dictator who said that he owned everything, that was right. It.
Makes sense. Let's talk about other areas that are like that are new frontiers. I mean, you're a global entrepreneur. You've invested in a lot of different areas in your career, that being, and obviously a lot of times the first mover out in that area. What other areas are you excited about?
Are you talking about geographic regions?
Yeah, geographic, yep.
Yeah. Well, I think that India really has started to pick up. And let me tell you what I'm thinking about. Mm-hmm. The poorest countries in the world are the ones where this is all about trust, mm-hmm. And honor and honesty. The poorest countries in the world are the ones that where people don't trust each other, a lot of theft, and then it's a zero-sum game. Mm-hmm. And they think, if I take it from you, then I'm better off and you're worse off. When there's trust, people connect and they work for something for the future that will improve both their lives for the future. And best example of that is probably Singapore under Lee Kuan Yew. He took a country where people were making about $100 a year per capita and made it one of the richest countries in the world by instilling trust. The reason I think India has great potential is that Modi's first action as the premier of India was to get rid of the currency that was allowing people to do illegal things, and now it looks like that country's really starting to hum, and there's so much entrepreneurial activity. There's been sort of a direct line back and forth from India to the Silicon Valley, and that has really supercharged India, and that's very exciting. And I think now I can get on my talking about socialism, how people were thinking about socialism for a while. If you're Korean, and there was, back after the Korean War, they built that demilitarized zone, and they separated North from South Korea. And North Korea was a socialist system, and South Korea was a capitalist system, a free market system, capitalist system. Well, now fast forward 4 generations. Now in North Korea, they make about $150 per year per annum. In North Korea, they make $43,000 per year per annum. I mean, per year per person. So they're clearly a lot richer and living a lot better in South Korea. But here's something that that really sticks in my head. The average South Korean is now 4 inches taller than the average North Korean.
Interesting.
So I'm always, when I'm looking around for investment, I'm always looking for those countries that are on the way back to freedom and away from socialism, away from where the government controls everything. Government controls equal poverty. That's basically what happens. As soon as the government decides everything, you get poverty. And when the government backs away, and it's like George Washington saying, giving up his power and so for the good of the country, or Gorbachev did that for a while. Deng Xiaoping did it in China. When you have a leader that is willing to sacrifice their own power for the good of the country, then you get freedom. And that freedom creates prosperity throughout for centuries to come, for decades to come. So freedom turns out to be the key item. And we actually, I set up a nonprofit called the Draper Hero Institute, and they're doing a research program on which countries are the freest and which ones are trending toward freedom. And those are the ones that we're saying are the best for startups. So that's kind of it was a short question, but it got me going.
No, that's great. I love it. And I wanted to, it kind of leads into the next question. You're a big supporter of decentralization and Bitcoin and that whole ecosystem. Can you share a little bit about your early support of that and what you found and kind of your direction with that?
Yeah, I've got a Bitcoin tie on.
Nice.
I'm supporting the decentralized world. I'll tell you what I like about Bitcoin and the decentralized world. While the internet opened up these borders, they all suddenly we were trading with each other. And by the way, just so people understand the importance of trade and free trade, if I have a farm and you have a house and we don't trade, then you die of starvation and I die of exposure. If you multiply that by the 8 billion people around the planet, we're all interconnected. We're all interrelated. We're all getting this pen to my hand probably took, it was probably touched by 200,000 people from 30 countries.
Right.
We are all interconnected. We're all helping each other, doing things, serving each other, making each other's world better. And when you have that, that's a very powerful thing. Well, the internet opened up the world. We used to be tribal, where if I put up a border between us so that if you don't cross, we're safe. If I don't cross, you're safe. And that was the tribal system, and it worked very well because it kept us from killing each other off, and it let us prosper in our own little tribes. Well, then what happened was the internet opened it up, and we realized that we could trade with each other across borders much, much easier. and suddenly we were all much wealthier, much better off without these geographic borders. Well, then then Bitcoin came along and said, this is now you can actually trade across those borders and you can have a global currency. And that currency is not restricted at the border. That currency is not tied to any geographic territory. It's not tied to any political force. It doesn't decrease in value when you print 13 trillion of them.
Right.
Bitcoin, there are only 21 million. That's all they're going to be. And so it turns out to be something that allows incredible global freedom. Imagine this: you're in Syria and you have a lot of Syrian money, and you then get pushed out by the military, and you're now in Greece and you're a refugee and you have nothing.
Right.
That was not Syrian money, it was Bitcoin. You would go into Greece and you'd pull that down and you start your life over again and you'd be fine. That's just one example of the many examples of why, well, first, digital money is much more efficient, much more effective. And with Bitcoin, you don't have to pay your credit card company 2.5 to 5% every time you swipe your credit card. By the way, most of that goes to the banks.
Right.
And it kind of opens up our currency world. In fact, if I needed to send you money right now, I don't know exactly how I would do it. I guess I could wire it. I could call the bank and have them wire it. Cost, I don't know, what is it, $40, $50 a wire.
Right.
It would, and then, or I could, if you're in another country, I could send it through Western Union, and that would cost about 18%.
Right.
But with Bitcoin, I can just, grab my cell phone, push 2 or 3 buttons, put it up against the camera here, and you would get your money.
That's pretty fast.
It's super fast. Well, that's all people are going to discover how easy that is. And as they do, they will move away from these currencies that are in effect forced on them from their government. Imagine being in Argentina. I met with President Macri before he was put out of office, and I told him about Bitcoin. And then 2 years later, I went back and I met with him again, and I told him, hey, Bitcoin's gone from 10,000 down to 4,000, but during that time, the Argentinian peso has gone from 75 cents to 25 cents. I'll tell you what, we'll make a bet going forward, which of these currencies does better, and I'll double my investment in Argentina if the Argentinian peso does better. But if Bitcoin does better, you make Bitcoin your national currency. And we had a very heated, fun conversation after that. He never actually made the bet. We did shake at the end, but it wasn't about the bet.
Gotcha.
If he had done it, I think Argentina would have been much better off. But he got pushed out of. He got voted out of office, and the Argentinian peso now has gone from 25 cents to 1 penny, less than 1 penny.
Should have taken that bet.
And that during that time, Bitcoin's gone from 4,000 now to 11,000.
Wow.
So I'm sort of sorry he didn't make the bet.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry he didn't stay in office, but it is very clear that if you're in Argentina, you would much rather do business in Bitcoin. Same thing with Nigeria, same thing with Venezuela, and same thing with America, because America just printed $13 trillion. They devalued your currency, our currency, by about 20%, 30%, something like that. So we're certain to have, whether we have inflation, we will have inflation. Pretty certainly.
That makes sense. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the creation of Draper University, and it kind of leads into then creating startup heroes, which we want to talk about as well. So let's talk about Draper University. Well, how did you decide to start Draper University? What was the process there?
So I felt like in 2008, when the markets were collapsing and the financial system was under siege, and nobody knew whether they had value or not, whether any people were talking about the dollar not being worth anything. I thought this would be a time for heroes. This would be a time for the entrepreneurs to rise. But in the financial world, all I saw were people with their heads in the sand. They were all afraid of themselves and of what was happening, and they wanted to go away until it was fixed. And I thought, well, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this picture? And I think the education systems of the world want people to memorize stuff. They want them all locked in class. And all the grading systems are, you get an A or the top grade if you don't make any mistakes. And I thought, well, it doesn't make sense, because really the best things that have happened in life, penicillin, all these things happened by mistake. Penicillin, electricity, Reese's peanut butter cups, America, they were all started by mistake. And so why aren't we allowing those mistakes? Why aren't we allowing people to fail? And it got me thinking, well, it was sort of an interesting time, and I had bought an old hotel, and my son suggested that I start a school with a hotel. And I thought, well, this is the time. I've got to create a school for heroes. And so that's what I did, and it has been a tremendous success in a lot of different ways. Not financially yet, but it has been a great success. And financially in one way, which I'll explain. We create heroes. We encourage people to try things and fail. We have them go through survival training. We have them do a 36-hour hackathon where they're pretty much up the entire time.
Wow.
We have them meet some of the best entrepreneurs in the world. And we have them do everything project-based, and they're all team-based. And it turns out that most of the world, when they work, are working in teams. But when you're in school, you're forced to not work in teams. You're forced to be the individual. And you even don't want the other person to learn it, because that would mean that you would be behind them somehow. And that doesn't make any sense. We don't learn nearly as well because of that sort of the negative competition inside of schools. So I'm trying to turn that entire thing around. And so far we've had 1,200 students of the Hero Training School.
Wow.
And they've come from 86 different countries, and they've started about 300 companies themselves. And then they've also sent me another 3,000 opportunities to invest. And what's happened from those investments, the investments we've made in the Draper University Heroes have been quite successful. And that's what's made it worth it financially for me to have done this. It wasn't really, when I started it, it wasn't for financial reasons. It was just for I thought a global need. Yeah. And it turns out that both are happening. And I think if you make money doing something, you're doing something good. If you're not making money, you're probably not doing anybody any favors, because you need to, somebody on the other side has to feel that it's worth it to pay for your service. I think that's an important thing. So anyway, our service seems to be doing very well, but then COVID came along and we had to go online. Okay. And we created a similar hero training, entrepreneur training system online, and it's 2 weeks and $500. And we've had about 500 people in that program so far, and it seems to be quite successful. So Zoom calls are getting closer to real life, right. And we're able to in effect, make it an offline-online experience.
That's phenomenal. I mean, you're reaching more people faster. That's fantastic.
And the book was really written because I kept repeating myself at
Right.
Draper University, and I thought, hey, this would be a good idea to show everybody, allow other people to get that same kind of thought-provoking training.
Right.
That
So
we put.
let's talk about the book, and you've got the Startup Heroes Pledge in there. Talk about like a little bit about that pledge and kind of what it means to you.
Well, I can give it to you.
Okay, let's do it.
I will promote freedom at all costs.
Yep.
I will do everything in my power to drive, build, and pursue progress and change. My brand, my network, and my reputation are paramount. I will set positive examples for others to emulate. I will instill good habits in myself. I will take care of myself. I will fail and fail again until I succeed. I will explore the world with gusto and enthusiasm. I will treat people well. I will make short-term sacrifices for long-term success. I will pursue fairness, openness, health, and fun with all that I encounter, mostly fun. Hey! I will keep my word. I will try my best to make reparations for my digressions. And that's the oath. And the thinking behind the oath is to give people, I realize the sun just came out.
Oh,
so,
that's okay.
I wanted to give people a guiding light that was probably different from the guiding lights that they've been getting in other places. And the one I thought was the most important was the first one. I will promote freedom at all costs.
Yeah.
I think if I were to have written it again, or I put in an amendment, it would have something to do with trust. Trust people and be trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
I keep my word is in there. I will keep my word is in there, but I think I'd go a little further with that.
Well, the good thing about this book is it's in beta. It says it even on the cover, so you can always update it. That's just a fix.
You know, Skype was brilliant that way. They, for years and years and years, the Skype service was beta 0.8 or 0.91 or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, I definitely am not, I'm certainly not finished with this book.
Right.
And there are going to be problems with it because I wrote it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just call it a beta version.
I think it's great. And I love that there's like these little nuggets of information. I mean, obviously some great stories in there too, but I like that. Let's dive a little bit into each one of those, each one of those kind of pledge items. Some of that kind of resonate to me. Obviously you talked about freedom. You talked, I don't know if it was actually a pledge item, but in the book, you really talk about fear being a mind killer. And
yeah, and that's
really
not
powerful.
Original to me. That's from the book of Dune, the science fiction book Dune.
Okay.
Frank Herbert writes, "Fear is the mind killer," and actually it was pretty interesting. There's a very successful president in Uruguay who I was talking to recently, and he said, "Fear kills all economies," and so fear really, and it's interesting because the media thrives on fear.
Right, the news cycle is not nonstop fear. Right.
Watch the local news, and every story is a fear story. Mm-hmm. I did that once. I tested. I thought, okay, well, let's just see how many of these stories are tied to fear. And it was 13 out of 13.
Wow.
Every single story was a fear story. And it's, I mean, they somehow get you thinking fear, and then you want to watch more. Right. Yeah, oh God, oh yeah, I gotta watch this more. And then you're watching all their ads, and then you got to take all the drugs from all their ads, and then you're scared again, and it's a bad cycle. Mm-hmm. But if you're willing to go out there and try things and fail again until you succeed, mm-hmm. And explore the world with gusto and enthusiasm, you'll have a better life. Right. And they will, and the people around you will be more attracted to you, and you will have, you will make a bigger impact on your world. So I actually think that that fear, it's either and also I know in politics, sometimes they thrive on fear, like the dictators. They thrive on fear. They push fear. But the great leaders push opportunity. The great leaders encourage more Bitcoin use. They encourage more open borders. They encourage less fear. The ones who just want to hold on to their power sort of desperately, those are the ones that they infuse fear into their society, and fear is an economy killer as well as a mind killer. So I think that's it's very important to identify, so then when you are faced with it, you can defend yourself against fear. All the decisions I made that were made based on fear were the wrong decisions. Every decision that I made based on courage or dynamism or the hope of a better future, they haven't all been successful, but they had much more likelihood of success. And then I talk about gusto and enthusiasm because it's the optimist who make the impact on society. The optimist creates the great businesses. The optimist becomes, a great figurehead or whatever, a great leader. The pessimists of the world have some value. They are the ones who find the holes in the optimist's arguments, or tell the optimist what they think is wrong. But the optimist is the one who gets it done. The optimist is the one who says we're going to Mars.
Right. That's a great one.
And I think that's important. It's important to be an optimist, to sort of think, okay, what's the positive? Whenever I find myself sort of dipping down into the negative, thinking, oh God, something's wrong in the political system or something's wrong here. The best way to come out of that is, as an optimist, what can you do to help it? What can you do to improve it? That's where 3 Californias and 6 Californias in the school voucher program all came from. I looked and I was down in the dumps thinking, oh gosh, this is so bad. This system is so bad.
Right.
What do I do to improve it? And I don't know if any of those things moved to improve it, but at least I tried. It turns out I lost all 3. Well, I only lost once. The other 2 times I got out politically maneuvered.
And it's a work in progress, right?
Yeah, I guess I could keep trying. It is expensive to try, but I guess I could keep trying.
So let's talk a little bit about that fear versus optimism, and obviously the approach to failure and whatnot. You've got some great wins with folks that have done that. Like you talked about the Elon Musk. We talked about a bunch of them. One that I wanted to highlight, just because it's one that was a big one, was Theranos. And I know that's a close to home kind of.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was a company that you knew the founder. She knew our daughter, Jessie, but yet you still remain bullish. I mean, in the book, you remain bullish on that company. Can you share kind of your thoughts around the fear versus optimism and failure there?
Yeah, I think Theranos was really Elizabeth Holmes was really a great entrepreneur doing extraordinary things. If you're an entrepreneur and you get to be a pretty good entrepreneur, nothing really happens and you can kind of build your business and nobody really messes with you. But if you're an entrepreneur and you go after an industry and mess with an industry that is as incredibly powerful as the monopoly or oligopoly of drug companies, the monopoly of the AMA, the insurance business, the oligopoly of insurance business, and I guess the relationship between the lobbyists and the government, you are going to be up against. You're going to face something if you're going after those industries that are that powerful. You are going to face a fight, and that fight will come either legal, government lobbying, through the press, whatever. anyway, that's what happened to her. She went through and got hit through the press first, then legally, then through the government, and the lobbying was going on the whole time trying to get her out of business because she was messing with an industry that's very big and very powerful. Mm-hmm. I think that has happened to all the great entrepreneurs. I mean, Uber, the taxis came after Uber, but it was too late. The consumers had spoken. We like Uber better than the taxi service. You know, too bad taxis. We're not going to do anything for you. Elon with the cars. The cars were the other car companies came after him with the press. The press said, "Oh, these batteries die in the cold weather," or whatever. And Elon goes and he proves that no, these cars actually are fine in the cold weather. This guy for the New York Times just drove around in the parking lot for 3 hours to run out of batteries, so he couldn't make it to his destination.
Makes sense.
And he went out, and the great entrepreneurs figure out how to when they get poked by the press, they figure out how to parry back and say, yes, but hey, it's the safest way, it's the cheapest way to test your blood, whatever. I think that there was probably a better way for her to have handled that whole thing.
Right.
But you knew that when you were getting that big and that successful, that the people, the incumbents, would be coming back after you.
Definitely. That makes sense. We actually have a company that was part of our Startup of the Year. It's called Periomics. They're the only company in the world that's been able to identify every known bacteria, virus, bacteria, fungus from a urine sample. And they actually won Startup of the Year a couple of years ago, and they're selling those tests online and doing well, but they did get hit with similar, mainly fallback from Theranos. When they were out raising, they're actually out raising again and continue to try to push ahead with their mission, but totally hear you. And so I'm curious if that's an area that you jump into again as they continue to be out there.
Yeah, I've seen 15 companies doing exactly what Theranos was doing, or more or less.
Right.
And I imagine that the guys from Fortress now who own all the Theranos patents will be coming after them.
Some will be new. Okay.
Or working with them to get better deals. So yes, I think. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Technology wins all the wars eventually. And this war where Elizabeth was trying to change healthcare as we know it, and going up against the big system that is actually, turns out, the last 4 years are the first time that we've lived shorter lives because of healthcare. And so she was clearly going after something that really needed changing. That didn't want to change. But I think it's coming, and I think we're going to see some great companies come that do make it so that you can test blood, create a feedback loop within the body. There are a lot of interesting things coming along the pike that are more data driven than wet lab driven. And it's quite exciting. We've got a company called Cloud Medics that allows people to do a bet through AI. They can do, just with medical histories, they can do a better job of diagnosing someone than the average doctor can. And when combined with a doctor, they do even better.
That makes sense.
And then one of our companies, Verge Genomics, has made it so through the dry lab on the computer, they can put the disease up on the screen and run off-patent drugs against it. And they found something that is 25 times as effective as remdesivir for combating COVID. And it's going through FDA approval now. And a lot of drug companies are all sort of working to get the distribution rights for that drug. So interesting things happening in healthcare. A lot of it will be data driven.
Data driven.
And it'll be data like, what I ate for breakfast and how many miles I've walked and what airplane seat I sat on, what conferences I attended, who I shook hands with. All those things are going to be completely connected, and that's going to be an exciting new level of healthcare, and it will be much cheaper. And that's where the big institutions are not going to be liking it, because those drug companies, as you know, they advertise like crazy on TV, and that's because they have so much money that they're making off of these drugs that maybe aren't the best thing for you.
No, that makes sense. And we're just about out of time, and so I wanted to ask you one more question and then kind of wrap it up here. If you could give one piece of advice to the startups that are out there pitching? We talked a lot about the pledge and everything you're looking for, but what's that one thing that you think that you look for from a startup that you want to invest in that you would share with those companies?
Well, I think entrepreneurs come in all shapes and sizes, and they come to us and have lots of different stories. I think it's mostly heart. It's mostly what's in your heart that I'm looking for. Do you have real passion for what you're doing? Or are you just doing it to make money? And then, is the industry big enough? Is this worth sacrificing your life for? Because it is a big sacrifice to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
Those are some of the things I'm looking for. And then, are you taking a new technology and applying it to an existing system that needs the new technology? So all those things combined, I think, are what we're looking for. And then you can't be completely right in the mainstream, because I always say that when we had 10 partners at DFJ, our decision-making system was never as good as when it was just one of us or three of us, because you need the extra piece. It needs to be something that is not obvious to the world. If it were obvious to the world, you'll have 1,000 other competitors. But if it's sort of unique to you, then that's quite exciting. So make sure that if you're starting something, that you are uniquely qualified to do it, and you are going to be the best in the world at it.
Thank you, Tim, for that advice. And you connect with companies everywhere. So what's the best way for them to find and connect with you?
Oh, I'm Tim at draper.vc, but only send me business plans. When you've written up a great business or decks, I've written up a great deck or written up a great business plan, then definitely use my email address, tim@draper.vc.
Right.
But if you send me anything else, you end up going to spam.
You probably get a lot of emails. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, because I need to clear through them quickly, and and it's a big part of my job. Actually, I'd say maybe half of my deal flow just comes from people who know my email address. So I appreciate that. Keep it coming.
There you go. If you got a business plan or you've got something working, send it to Tim. Thank you, Tim, so much. We really appreciate it, your time. This is an amazing conversation, and really appreciate you sharing it with the community and all you do championing and investing in startup heroes everywhere. The book is Startup Heroes. It's Tim Draper. Thank you so much.